Welcome to On the Table, a podcast about board games, card games, and tabletop war games. Welcome back to On the Table Gaming, episode 105, and today I'm joined by Josh, and we're going to be exploring the recently revealed previewed units coming to A Song of Ice and Fire. So Josh, thanks for coming on the podcast.
You're welcome, Chase.
All right, so we got to get up there in that rookery and take a look at some of these new information we've got about cool units coming to A Song of Ice and Fire. So we'll get on up there.
Here we go.
Whew. All right. So first off, oh my gosh, what exciting news. So in the Asmodee UK pre-order form, there was the reveal of some units that had hitherto not been known, which included things like the Golden Company, Karstarks, and some future hero boxes. So there's a lot here to speculate about. And maybe I think the biggest news was probably the mention of the Golden Company. And this is a kind of a faction that's, I would say, is probably one of the most hotly requested for the game.
100%. I mean, they're almost like the Boba Fett of Game of Thrones in that, like, in the actual work, they're not in there that much, but then like the coolness factor and like the amount people like them for how little they actually have done is pretty sweet. Like, it's more like the mystique around them than it is about their actual deeds.
Yeah, because everybody, I mean, what have they done? They've marched around a lot in the books. I know they've sort of shifted alliances a little bit, but it's like all the characters.
Only once, Chase. Only once did they ever break a contract.
and they've, but everyone talks about them with like such reverence. They're like, oh no, the Golden Company's coming. Like, what are we gonna do?
Yes, and then of course on the show, spoiler alert.
that whole season was hilarious, but. Yeah.
That was their equivalent. That was their equivalent of Boba Fett getting accidentally knocked into the Sarlacc pit.
Oh my gosh!
It's just like, oh,
that's it. That was them. Okay, great. Yeah, and it's tougher there because it was they're trying to like show you the stakes are so real.
Yeah,
by like these awesome guys just got obliterated so quickly. But for a lot of people maybe who hadn't read the books or they weren't necessarily as hyped up in the series. We're just like, okay, who are those guys? They're gone. They've been toasted.
Still kind of deflating because like they made a big deal about them like getting enough cash to hire them.
Right.
And then they're like, all right, they're here. It's really scary. And then they're like, oh no, they're all dead.
They just need another Euron in a boat. That would have done it.
Yes. Whose crossbow only works when the plot needs it to.
Hey, there were some crossbows on those walls. They could have he could have just manned them all. Deleted scenes or something.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll see if we ever get a redux here. Or maybe we are holding out hope for the books. But so
release the chase cut.
In the books, the Golden Company is about 10,000 people, right? So it's got a huge mounted contingency. It's got a bunch of elephants, and we've got your swordsmen, your crossbowmen. So it's a pretty fleshed out force, and it's known for really getting the job done, right? To kind of like almost like a legendary extent. They're known for their like unwavering steadfastness in the front of overwhelming odds.
Exactly.
So
sort of the cream of the mercenary crop, right? Like they're the ultimate professional soldiers who are just badass mercenaries.
And so, we have 3 units that got listed, on this pre-order form. We've got the Golden Company elephants, the swordsmen, and the crossbowmen. What do you think? Any predictions on what we might see as maybe being like a defining feature of some of these units?
Great question. I'm going to go out on a limb. I think elephants are going to trample the mammoths.
Makes sense. So it's going to be kind of like a mammoth reskin, you think?
Well, but here's what I think. I also think the Golden Company is going to like throw some archers on their backs, like the old Mumakil from Lord of the Rings.
Oh man,
that's my speculation.
Okay, they're going to take a cue from Euron and be like, "Here we go. We need."
A crossbow on that old boy.
That would make sense. I wonder what they do. Like, the mammoths aren't. The mammoths are naturally kind of resilient in their own right. They've got a pretty big, they've got 8 wounds and 3+ armor. I don't really know. Could you maybe have a mammoth that was more armored than that? That maybe seems a little bit terrifying in itself. I wonder if you might see them with like some sort of plating. But the more I say that, the more I think you're probably right. It's not going to be that because there's not as much design space there. If you gave it some sort of, slight ranged option, maybe it would make it a little bit more versatile.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to me, it's like I don't expect the Golden Company to be cheap units. I expect them to be like very expensive badass units, right? They're like the most expensive to field, like in the lore. So it makes sense for them to be the most expensive to field, like in a tabletop scenario. So I almost expect them to have like, just hyper elite models, right? Like maybe elephants are like a 9-point model, maybe even a 10-point model, but they're just gross.
So, the swords, the swordmen and the crossbowmen might be see variations. I'm thinking maybe there's something to do with morale there, although, I mean, that kind of makes sense. The one thing I couldn't settle on was there's so much made in the books about how, this is pay this company. Would they maybe make use of the wealth zone? But on the flip side, it was like once you paid them, like you didn't really need to worry about it as long as they're going to get paid, like they wouldn't flip sides. So like maybe the wealth zone wouldn't make sense because it's like, why do you need to control the wealth zone if once you've done it, you're good?
Good question. I think, this is going to fit into like a really interesting space in like the neutrals in particular, because, we've already got obviously like some heavily armored neutral infantry with things like blackguards, right? And you have some ranged ability with like the bastards girls, but this is like, I think to me, you're going to be looking at like more of like a heavy elite infantry and a true dedicated ranged unit to add into the mix.
Yeah, I guess that would make sense. I also get a little bit scared about just neutrals in general. Like, and I get it's such a great thing. It's such a force multiplier that the more attachments and units you have out there, the more diversity there are in tons of lists. But I do worry if you have like a super high morale unit that is available for like lots of factions, that's a pretty big hole for some factions. And I know that, you can only take up to 50% of your list, but, sometimes it's nice to be able to be like, okay, like, this faction does this really well, but we know they're going to have some morale weaknesses. I'll play into that. When it's like, well, now they've got this other object to maneuver around. Does throw a little bit. I guess I'm not such a big deal about the units because you can always outmaneuver units. I think a lot of times it's like the attachments. Those hedge knight attachments, those are giving me a little bit of fits.
Oh, they're great for 1 point too. Yeah, I agree with you. I think like a parallel would be like something like in Magic cards, right? You've got artifacts are like the generic, sort of card type that can fit into any deck because the mana cost is generic. Similar idea here is that like when artifacts are too good, it pushes like everything else out of the way, right? And so, you do want to be careful. And, I know they're aware of this, that they don't want neutrals to be like better than everything else. Like just like remember when Flayed Men were like easily the best cavalry in the game, right? Yeah. They were just so good. And then, basically everyone was like, okay, we're starting with like as much of that neutral stuff as we can fit in, and then the rest of our faction. So it does water down sort of your faction specific stuff. But that said, I still think it's really cool that you could insert these guys into any collection you have. It's really great for bolstering new factions where not all of their stuff is out yet, right? Like I ran a lot of Boltons with my Baratheons to fill in like, ranged options and mounted options. So I think it's just, they just have to make sure they strike the right balance.
Man, these people are going to be so excited when this starts to come out. Any crazy thoughts here? Like I keep thinking like, oh, they're definitely neutral, right? Like by definition, they're mercenaries. I wonder if we'll ever see like additional sub factions. Like we saw how the Stormcrows now are kind of built into the Targaryen faction. I know the Golden Company has like a history of having a lot of like expat Targaryens or loyalists in their ranks. I wonder if we might see something where we have like the neutral unit and then like faction specific versions. But maybe that's like kind of getting ahead in like future iterations of the game.
That's a good possibility. I mean, like, right, like there was like rumors of them aligning with Stannis at one point that he had hired them. Then there was rumors.
It's been like 11 years. I mean, was that just the rumors that they were hired, or were they actually allied with them? Because there was like the whole like who's it with who at what time, and like I heard a rumor that they're going this way. Oh, actually, no, they're marching the opposite direction. They're not coming to Westeros. Like
right. Well, and then I think we do actually see them right with Griff.
Right, so exactly.
It's hard to say. I mean, I think like ultimately like where they wind up is probably aligned with Targaryens. But if you watch the show, work with the Lannisters. So I don't know. I mean, they probably could go either way.
So this will probably be a fact that's like definitely going to be in the neutrals. Like where Stormcrows, you see like the Targaryen element. This is probably going to be just like pure neutral.
Yeah, I would suspect that that's a good possibility. Well, you never know.
And then they're all, other units as well. So not even neutral units. We have Karstark Loyalists. Now, I think the Karstarks were actually mentioned at a cmon Expo. It might actually even go back to like one of the first years that the game was talked about at cmon Expo. I'm kind of envisioning, I have to go hunt it down, but I think there was maybe a chat with Eric Lang, like way back in the beginning. what was it kind of thrown out there like as a name that like this is a concept, and obviously the Karstarks are a thing, but it's kind of exciting to see now that we're seeing more of these Stark subhouses being filled out, and or is this maybe got like a Bolton synergy? I don't know.
Maybe. Well, in the book, this is based on the books, and the books haven't gotten there yet, right? So that's the only
true.
That's the only thing is like the Karstarks, they were mad at Robb, right? But they didn't actually they left his force, but they didn't join with anybody else, as far as I know.
Yeah, that's a good point. I always forget too that the books, it's been such a long time. Like we don't know if Jon Snow is dead or not.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's a heck of a cliffhanger.
Like, what if it comes back and they're like, "Yeah, no, he's dead." Like that was you can go a total different direction. So yes, I guess in the books, then they're definitely House Stark loyalists still.
Right. That's what I would suspect.
And I get super excited when I see these kind of sub faction groups, and obviously the Starks have a bunch of bannermen, and they're kind of filling out their different houses, whether it's the Tully or the Umber or the Mormont. Having Karstark, well, that's awesome. I actually did have a friend comment that they were a little bummed in that they want to see more just plain Stark units besides like Stark Sworn Sword, Outriders, and Archers. And that they want to play like Starks and not as much Bannermen. And, I hadn't really thought about that because I always think of it kind of as a coalition force. You play a lot of Starks. Does that ever kind of cross your mind?
I was never the biggest fan of most of the generic Stark stuff anyway. So I tended to bring a lot of, mixed units. Mm-hmm. I do think it's cool to have the option of like some generic Stark forces, just to have a little bit more, but what would they be, right? Like we already kind of got cavalry and a infantry and a bowman unit. So what would be the missing piece there?
And there's also like the honor guard technically, but I guess they were kind of saying they want to have a cool, like an iconic, just like this is a Stark elite unit. Because I feel like it often goes to elite units, outside of the house faction or outside of the, that narrow slice. And I never really thought of that because I guess for me, the Stark faction is like kind of really embodied by like the characters, right? Like you care more about like Robb Stark or Ned Stark than you do about like, Stark Pointy McStickman or something. It's a pending future release here.
Yeah, well, hopefully he's in the hero box for sure. Pointy McStickman.
And then skipping ahead, also we have a few other unit boxes mentioned, including the Casterly Rock Honor Guard. And I was trying to think, you can go to Search of Ice and Fire, and it lets you search through keywords in the books. And so I was trying to find out, like, what exactly were the Honor Guard? And so I'm not entirely sure. So I could be totally off base here. But I think this might be a reference to a troop type that was mentioned in Feast for Crows. And there was a group of troops that escort Tywin's body back to Casterly Rock. I might be wrong. And
right.
have you seen this come up in like other games, maybe like the card game or other Song of Ice and Fire properties?
I don't specifically remember them. No. In the card game, the Lannisters were much more about like what they call the intrigue phase, which was like a forced discard. I mean, they certainly had combat as well, but that was not necessarily their number one thing. I don't remember a unit with that specific name, but they could easily also just be doing this as like a, well, I guess it's not going to be the same thing as Eddard's Honor Guard, is it? It'll have to be a separate unit.
Because, we've got the King's Guard already. We've got the Red Cloaks, which are kind of like a more elite Praetorian style guard. They actually even look like kind of have like a Romanesque, Roman sort of style. So I was like, maybe these would be, another kind of elite unit, like a bodyguard unit. It could be a hero unit, like you're saying. I thought maybe would we see them start to use some of that like card draw mechanics like we see with the Kingsmen and the Queensmen, or maybe that'll be more of like a Baratheon thing.
I hope it's just a Baratheon thing because we're drawing cards that aren't that good. if you have units that are drawing Lannister cards,
this is the 2021 update, man. You're forgetting the old days, sir.
Oh yeah. The Baratheon Tactics deck went from like a F to a D.
To it? What? Really? All right, fine. You're just jealous you don't have Endless Horde.
Oh, God. They had so many. Listen, they had some really powerful cards in the old edition.
Yeah.
But then the problem was they also had a lot of they had like a lot of trigger problems where you'd end up holding a lot of these powerful cards in your hand. Now it's like a lot of cards that are just like, put this on a morale, until you fail a morale test, then it does nothing.
In defense, I'll say I think the tactics cards across most factions got toned down just so they're not like such big playmakers.
Except for the free folk who get to just create a unit.
You guys out here, this is what I have to put up with on a regular basis, everybody. Just complaining about the free folk deck. We'll see. Tonight when we play, I'll bust out some Targaryen, so we'll see. I can already just giving you a heads up. That's going to be hilarious. There's nothing better than seeing a mostly free folk player pull out a bunch of cavalry and try and maneuver and get used to maneuvering things like so fast and appropriately and not having things get cut off. And so,
well, if it makes you feel any better, I'm playing like Baratheons and a lot of stuff that's like moving like 4 inches. So I think you'll be able to outmaneuver me pretty
we'll
safely.
See. Never underestimate the power of misplays. But that being said, let's do the last of their unit box where we talk about the hero boxes. There is also mention of the Highgarden Pikemen, because when you think Baratheon, you're thinking we need another defensive unit that is tough to kill for Baratheons.
Hopefully slow would be good.
Hopefully so. But this is actually going to put you guys maybe a little bit closer to parity. I was actually surprised, and I don't really remember off the top of my head what else is planned and been announced for the releases of this year. But Baratheons are a little bit out of parity right now, right?
Yeah, well, I'll say this. Jokes aside, I think that the Baratheons are actually in a better place from a unit perspective in the current meta, because offense is toned down across the board. So I think defense and healing are kind of at a premium right now. So if you can block hits and recover from wounds, I think that's extremely strong. And I think that, that's maybe a little tougher to pull off with Stannis, but in Renly's force I think he's positioned really well. So I'm interested to see where the pikemen fit in, right? Like what kind of unit are we expecting? I mean, are they going to be like a set for charge kind of thing? Are they going to, how do they compare to, say, Rose Knights and Wardens and Sentinels? Like we have a lot of like elite infantry choices right now. And of course the often maligned, what are they called, Stag Knights? Is that the name of them? It's been so long since I've ran them. I forget the name.
Oh no, they're back. You're talking about the Stag Knights on foot.
I've heard. Yes, I've heard that they're better than they used to be.
You got to bust them out. The next time we play, we'll get them on the table more here.
Just have like, PTSD from running them the first time, just as like a sample. I was like, oh God.
That was also when it was like, I was really getting into using like pretty heavily like auto wound lists and stuff too. And just be like, all right, I'll nom on some slow Baratheons.
They're just getting nuked right away. Like, all right, I get it.
And so the Unsullied Pikemen, they're a 7-point unit. They've got set for charge and they've got shield wall blocking hits. I mean,
yes.
Getting extra damage out there and preventing damage in a list that's going to probably have some healing elements like that could be terrifying.
Just think about it this way. Like, how many times is there like a unit where they're rolling like 7 dice hitting on 4s and you can block D3 hits? It's like they might not hit you at all.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
I mean, obviously, I'm thinking like best case scenario. But
now they've switched shield wall, so it's not blocking D3 hits though. Now it's +1 hit for rank. So it's even better in the beginning, right?
Yes.
So
oh my God. Yeah, exactly. So like, how do you crack that nut, right? You're going to have to like really swing in with something enormous, preferably in the back so that it doesn't, but there's like, that's kind of hard to orchestrate unless the person's really not paying attention. So yeah, I think having set for charge be in the flanks and not just the front and shield wall does make for a very, very, very tough unit.
So start saving up for these. It sounds like one you might get a few units of, maybe two at least. So then in the attachment box for Baratheons, you get a pikeman captain. I wonder if that's going to be something you're going to want to dump right into the pikeman, right? Because it had, boldness and courage, +1 attack die at full ranks, +1 rank for attack die. Or if, sometimes I think we see on some of these more defensive units, they like maybe don't have a decaying profile at the start.
Right. So like, like halberdiers, things like that, like they sort of have, like you have to get them down to like last rank before. So what I'm assuming the pikemen then wouldn't also have that same profile then. So maybe they do decay and this would be like sort of a good fit for them.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll have to see. But I mean, I think pikemen, spearmen, halberdiers, like that's all stuff that's really cool. I like seeing those like sort of units where like the positioning does matter. And, I know that now the flanks are more defended. You have to get to the actual rear. But I think it's cool when you have a unit that you're like, okay, like I've got to make sure the facing and everything like lines up correctly. And if I position my troops well, they're very hard to get through. But if you crack that nut or you get behind me somehow, now I'm a little bit more open. I think I just like the fantasy and the gameplay of that.
Oh, for sure. I mean, yeah, like spearmen should be good at holding points, right? And being like an obnoxious unit to charge into. That's what they're for. And
then we got a bunch of hero boxes. Now, this is the real shocker to me, is that they're talking about the Night's Watch Hero Box 3, the Lannister Hero Box 3, the Free Folk Heroes Box 3, and a Stark Heroes Box 3. For some of those, I'm going, wait a second. We didn't have a Free Folk Heroes Box 2 or a Night Watch Heroes Box 2, so it might be that's going to be released before this next pre-order phase. But
interesting. Yeah, I was going to say, I was like, I got confused for a second there because I was like, I know I have been not paying ultra close attention all the time, but it seems I don't remember seeing a Night's Watch 2 or a Free Folk 2.
Night's Watch 2 has been that thing of legend, right? That's been kind of like the meme. Like, where is it? When's it coming? It was never like...
Think about Baratheon's like probably a year younger, and they've already got 2 and an attachments box and everything else.
Well, the Night's Watch Hero Box 2, we saw, very early on in the game's development cycle, that picture of that elk, right? That giant elk with cold hands on it, or Benjen. I forget which one it was, but like you have this beautiful miniature, and then it was never really announced like that there was a Heroes Box 2. And I think it got announced by like another one is like stores putting up like a pre-order page or something. So there's been that kind of default banter back and forth, like, hey, how come we haven't gotten this yet? And it's like, well, it's never technically been really announced, but there've been hints to it. So when it does come, that'll be great. But I think that bodes well, right? To see something that's like, talking about stocking and things like that for Heroes Box 3. Hopefully that means
100%.
maybe this year, we get a Heroes Box 2. So, what might be in a Night's Watch Hero Box 3 then? I mean, we have the potential to go for some like really obscure characters here. I was looking on some of, A Song of Ice and Fire, the wiki, and A Search of Ice and Fire, looking at like kind of like where could be some like deep cuts here, like where the Shira Errol's of the Night's Watch. You got things like Chet, the former steward to Maester Aemon. And he got slain and was that first guy who turned into the white. So, now you could have the Night's Watch back to like 100% more white action, right? We could have this is their chance to introduce it. People are always like, we want our white walkers, et cetera. You could have it when he dies. You could replace it with some monstrosity. Not going to happen most likely, but there's room to explore this.
Yeah, well, I think there's definitely cool characters they haven't gotten to yet. I mean, we haven't seen Benjen yet, correct?
There has been rumors. I know there was Three-Fingered Hob. Interesting.
Yeah. Let's not forget Janos Slint, who is sent to the wall.
I don't think I remember him so much, but I kind of glaze over when it gets to talking about Night's Watch. It's like
he was the leader of the Gold Cloaks. That was the corrupt guy who got sent up north.
They even featured him in the show.
Yes, they sure did.
Man, yeah, I guess there's some cool options for that.
Spent a lot of time in that neck of the woods, so there's got to be a lot of. I mean, we're probably missing like some huge people that they could easily incorporate. But I think Benjen's got to be the big one, right?
Do you think they're trying to save like a few major references for future hero boxes? Because we're gonna have Hero Box 4, 5, 6. Eventually you're getting down to like a bunch of like, these are the cook staff, and, do you think they're going to kind of spread out? So when you think of some of the more iconic ones that are left, they're probably, I'm assuming, getting held back a little bit, or...
I mean, that's a good possibility. Yeah, I mean, you don't necessarily want to just go whole hog and then have like literally nothing else to fall back on. I don't know if we're there yet. Maybe by the time they get to Heroes Box 4, they would.
I hate to do those like my uncle works at Nintendo sort of things, but I've definitely asked Michael Chanel, being like, hey, what's going to happen? Are you worried you're going to run out of characters? And he's just like a laugh. He's just like, yeah, no, there's plenty of space. There's plenty of things.
So many characters. And don't forget too, they can always do like different versions of characters, right? Like, so Stannis has been released more than once, right?
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of like really unique things that they could release. Like, Jon Snow, I mean, in the card game, there's like 3 different versions of Jon Snow, right? And they're all sort of like different stages of his life. And you can easily do stuff like that with this game, right?
Oh, interesting. Good point.
And, commander versions, NCU versions, attachment versions. There's just, I think Heroes Boxes, like almost more than anything else, just adds such a cool variety to the game, just because like commanders are such a huge influence on an army that it's just so interesting. And like attachments can totally change the way that you build out a list.
And so besides the Night's Watch, there's also the Stark Hero Box. And, I'm trying to think, are there any major people that you'd like wish to see in a Stark's Hero Box?
I was going to say the character I'm thinking of, and I'm trying to remember his name, but do you remember Eddard Stark's bodyguard that got stabbed in the neck by Jaime Lannister?
Gosh, yeah.
But it was like his most trusted bodyguard, and he had in the game, in like the card game, he had this really cool effect where like if you tried to kill one of my really important characters, I could just kill him instead. And I would love to see something like that, right? Like where like he almost like step in the way of like a wound somehow.
That'd be fantastic. Or like a bodyguard mechanic. I think Jorah Mormont has a bodyguard attachment. Man, that's a way better. I was thinking like of like, Old Nan or something. Talking about like, Grumpkins and Snarks and things like that.
How to get Old Nan in the game.
Yeah, so gotta represent. And maybe she'd like do some boosts or something to Bran, or I don't know. But yeah, okay. So that would be, there's definitely some room for Starks. Also then there's all the sub factions they have, right? And it makes me wonder if they're talking Karstarks as another sub faction coming out. Can we start to see Karstark heroes here? Was it
Rickard? Right?
Rickard. Yeah, Rickard. Rickard, you may have stuff like, Rickard, Lord Rickard Karstark. There's a commander for you, and have a bunch of Karstark bonuses.
Admir Tully.
Oh, everyone wants him. Except his family.
Right.
And then, of course, we got the real exciting ones then are probably Lannisters and Free Folk, because, Free Folk. And the Lannisters are just such a characterful family in its own sense. Anyone for the Lannisters that you'd love to see? I
think Kevin Lannister is one of those characters that's also factored pretty heavily in the books. That's like really well regarded as a leader, next to, of course, Tywin. He's like the next most important Lannister, right? Like he's like uncle to Tyrion and to Cersei and everybody. So I think he'd be really interesting as a leader, like just a ruthless battle commander.
Well, now you got me inspired talking about like alternate versions of characters. What if we see a new version of Tyrion Lannister, and it's kind of the Kingsguard box? It's just Tyrion and like the Hill tribes,
yes.
And you just have him with like a bunch of these like not very well trained barbarian troopers.
The Hill tribes from Game of Thrones. Like that literally could be like a Kingsguard box, because there was like, I don't know, 10 different characters that are just in that one unit.
Yeah, exactly. And then, I actually, in thinking about this, there's a ton of different like sub tribes in the Vale. So there's a lot of room, although he was with the Stone Crows, right? I believe that was, but there's, the Moon Brothers, the Milk Snakes, the Sons of the Tree. So there's like a lot of like weird things they could mine for that. Although I guess maybe they wouldn't all be aligned with Tyrion, would they?
And it started that way.
Yeah. But, I still think that'd be an unexpected curveball. That'd be kind of cool. I feel like that's a thing maybe people don't know that they want. maybe that's just me. But it's like, do people realize they really want some Hill tribes, right? Come on.
Everybody wants Ulf, son of Umar.
Yes, exactly. He's up there. He's like a kind of more petite, like secondary version of like Tormund. He's got a spot in everyone's heart. Anyone else that I'm skipping over here for Lannisters?
You got Lancel, right? Lancel was another big character in the book.
There's like Podrick as well.
Podrick, oh my gosh, how could you forget Podrick? Talking about bodyguard mechanics, right? If we have, Podrick in there, use him with Tyrion. I think he literally did that in the card game too. He was like another character where it was like you could like sacrifice him instead of like losing your important character.
And then the big elephant in the room here is the Free Folk Heroes Box 3, right? That's I'm still excited to find out more about the Hero Box 2, but for Free Folk Hero Box 3, man, there's so many ways they can go with this. And I've maybe talked about this, if not on the podcast, but to other people who are, too slow to get away from me. But I'm waiting for Abel the Bard. I think Abel the Bard would be so cool. And, like an elite Spearwife unit. And I know he only takes 6 Spearwives when he goes to Winterfell, but I just think like a cool, like Kingsguard style unit, or maybe it's like a giant, like attachment box where it's him and then a bunch of like these awesome Spearwife attachments. That could be fantastic.
What about an actual giant?
That could be cool. Yeah.
As a Free Folk hero, like maybe it could be it'd be like a solo unit commander.
I could totally get behind that.
His name 1/1, right?
1/1. I would go with a 1/1. There's so many interesting characters in the Free Folk to explore. And the cool thing is like when you have like minor characters that have like weird legendary style abilities. Obviously there's things like Varamir Six Skins, but there's tons of other skin changers too. And at some point when you start to get like into the grass there a little bit more, or into the weeds there a little bit more, I think you start doing it. Yeah, sorry. Hey, once you start getting the weeds there a little bit more, you start thinking about like the animals more than the actual characters. Like Grisilla with her goat. Like I want a battle goat. Like I would totally be about that. If it was a Hero Box expansion that came out and I could get like a war goat, like I might drop some money on that. Not that I wouldn't buy it anyway, but I could be ready to that. So there's lots of room for that.
Didn't the dwarves ride a battle goat in Hobbit, the Battle of the Five Armies movie?
Yeah, so I talk about the books here, but that's kind of like a season 8 thing. I think we don't talk about the Hobbit movies that much.
I got you. Yeah, that's true. It's a little tough to watch.
Oh my goodness. But it's cool to see all these expansions being previewed, and it sounds like we got a lot of stuff coming up this year. And we really just hit our first quarterly release, to be honest, right? That last November one got delayed, and there was all these COVID issues, and so we basically had like a backup of a couple quarters where stuff didn't come out, it seemed. And then we suddenly got it all at once. And so now we're hoping we're going to be on this quarterly release schedule. We saw it deploy. I know there's been lots of news on, I was sharing some things in the On the Table Gaming Discord. There's some, CNN articles, et cetera, talking about like shipping problems. And they actually referenced board game companies specifically, which I thought was maybe unusual when you're talking about like global shipping issues. But hopefully things will start to balance out a little bit more.
We've ordered a lot of stuff recently, right? I mean, I got Kingsmen, I got Queensmen, I got the Mormont She-Bears. All we need now is the cards, right?
Mammoth now. I'm ready. I'm so excited. I haven't painted it up yet, but I'm gonna.
Yeah, so I feel like the floodgates are starting to open a little bit, which is awesome. Like stuff that was out of stock for a really long time is now much more readily available. So, I mean, hopefully that can keep up, and we can because it's always fun to buy new things. I mean, you play your old stuff forever, but it's so fun to like just try new stuff out.
And the organized play stuff was basically put on hold, it seemed, for a year, and so now things are slowly starting to open up, and I recognize that that's not the case everywhere, and there's a lot of other waves coming by, and we urge everyone to be cautious, and yet like we might see some things coming along that open up and get people out there playing more in person. So these are kind of exciting times.
Yeah, it's been so great to like actually be able to play. We're playing later today.
Yes.
I'm taking an army made up of entirely just new stuff that I haven't really played with yet.
And I'm going to play Targaryens, so we'll see how that goes. But the good news is for a lot of that stuff, until this like last wave came that I just got with like my dragons and I got some freedmen and pikemen, I had like basically all my stuff painted up. I did paint up a unit of pikemen, but I got to work. I got a couple hours. I'll try and get my at least a unit of freedmen together so I can have a force. No dragons, no painted dragons, at least to face off against you today.
Are you playing dragons today?
I think I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait and paint them up. I think it'll be cooler to like get the full dragon experience by having them go out there. So actually, I have it sitting on my desk. I haven't even cracked the seal on the box yet. So I'll go do that next.
What? How do you resist?
I know. I've just been sitting there already. I opened the Freedmen to do an unboxing, and then I started painting them up. And I was like, I'll finish these guys off. It's gonna be a quick paint. It's 3 units. And then we'll jump in and get to it.
I primed everything silver so that I at least have like a starting point, and then I started painting up my Kingsmen, like just like doing like the tabards and like a yellow that I found that I liked. So
well, I'm super excited, and I'm excited to get a game with you today too, in the flesh. And then in the future, we've also been dabbling with some other games. And for a future episode, let's talk about some other board games. And if people are listening, feel free to shoot us a message or drop us a note in the comments about some games that you really enjoy. And I'm looking for games that kind of capture a little bit of the wargaming experience, but maybe aren't traditional war games. And one game that you exposed me to, and I got to play it once, that like intro demo game, and I had a lot of fun, was Undaunted Normandy. And so, people had good experiences with that game. Let us know in the comments below. But let's try and get a few more games in with that, and then talk about that on a future episode.
100%. Yeah, it's a really cool game. There's already a few expansions that are available for it, but it does, in a single box, using like a deck building mechanic, it allows you to sort of recreate the feeling of like a little miniature war game, which is cool.
And I love that. It's a great one to travel with too. So. But let's cut it there. And guys, if you want to help us out, put out more episodes and more content, please consider supporting us on Patreon. That is how we fund ourselves. We don't run ads. Although actually, I can't say that. I did just start selling some t-shirts, but that was kind of mostly because people were begging me about it. And I was like, you know what? I can do that. That'll be fun for some people. So we can get some t-shirts out there. And then if you are in the Discord, or a Patreon supporter, remember we're doing a hobby hangout on Thursday. That's probably today for those of you listening, with Desi Knows, Mike Meeple, and the folks from the 3 Men in a War Game. We'll shoot out that Zoom link over Patreon, and you guys can jump in. We're just going to hang out. I've got like 6 boxes of Marvel Crisis Protocol stuff to like assemble. So we're going to just hang out and talk and catch up with people. And so be sure to jump on there, and we'll get some more going in the future if you guys enjoy that. And for everybody else, thank you so much for listening. And in the meantime, we hope you get your miniatures on the table.